cultivating mature positivity.
CMPRadio.net.
CMPRadio.net, it's the station. Listen, man, let's cultivate together. Bring us all your show ideas. Content creators, we're looking for that. Videographers, we're looking for that. You can be a part of the next great big thing that takes place right here in Chester, Pennsylvania. Let's cultivate together, man.
CMPRadio.net. It's the station.
Hey, Lottie Dottie and everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As you already know, I'm Chris, Queen Chris to be exact, and I just want to take the time out to thank you again for being here. This is going to be a really, 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 really interesting show. I really hope that you guys tune in, and you already know, make sure you like, follow, and is in tune with what's going on here at CMP Radio, Cultivate Mature Positivity. Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. If you could just introduce yourself really quickly.
Well, I'm Derrick Billups, Sr., and first of all, I'm glad to be here, and I'm just honored that you guys thought of me and thought to invite me here to the show. So I'm excited about what's going on. And so I'm here for you.
Okay. Thanks. So for those of you who don't know, we're actually here to talk about vitiligo. A quick definition is basically the cause of loss of skin color. So the pigmentation known as melanin could be lightened or just different in different, lighter in different spots of the body. So, Mr. Derrick, did I say it?
Yep, Derrick Billups, yep.
So how long have you had this condition or anything close to similar?
Well, when I first realized it or recognized it, I'd say maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It would come and go, okay, and then I don't know if it was seasonal, but at one point it would be very visible, and then later on it wouldn't be as visible. And then at one point a few years ago, then the same spot was there, it stayed there, and it's got a little larger. And at that point I knew it was there, but at that point I started to talk to my doctor, do a little reading up. I've got a friend who is a doctor of naturopath, so I'm talking to him about it. And then once I found out, then it is what it is, and so I just continue to move on.
I love that saying. That's one of my favorite sayings. I gotta admit, it is what it is. Right. Taking that ownership. So you said that some of the things that were different was that it would come, but it would kind of fade away. Was it more so the coloration that made you notice? What were some of the specific things that stuck out to you?
Yeah, the coloration is easy because I'm a pretty dark-skinned brother, so it was easy to recognize there was something different on me. So, and maybe some other people, maybe not, but for me, it was definitely visible. And so I would see it. The problem was making it sometimes difficult to see it because where it's located. It was under my neck, so obviously if I'm shaving, I can tell, but for the most part, I couldn't if I'm looking straight ahead, if I'm walking, whatever. So it really wasn't recognizable. My wife really didn't recognize it, because she wasn't shaving me, So I had been trying to get it shaved, but she wouldn't do it. So at the end of the day, I would recognize it, then it would go away, and then I would, I pay attention. I was like, wow. And then, maybe a couple months, then it wouldn't be there.
Gotcha.
I said, okay, and just thought it was maybe something I was eating, something I was doing, stress, those type of things. So I was kind of contributing it to that. And then that's how I just kind of paid more attention to it until it appeared to be permanent in a sense. Okay.
And did you ever give yourself a diagnosis? Like, we're good to take what we know, go to Google and try to look things up and determine what was going on ourselves. Did you have that stage, or were you just going straight to the doctors once you noticed?
No, I because I know some people, I have some friends, and so I understood. I didn't know, really, it's a difficult name to pronounce, so I wasn't able to pronounce it, but I knew some friends at church, some things I was doing, so they were able to talk to me a little about it. And again, mine wasn't as defined as theirs, so. And because I wasn't as sure, I would just ask them questions about it, and they would tell me, and of course, they would tell me there wasn't any real cure, all those kind of things. So, at that point, as I mentioned earlier, and I don't mean to be redundant, but it would come and go, and because it came and went, I was just always assuming that was going to happen.
Gotcha.
Now I couldn't catch up with it, like what season. I wasn't paying any attention. So was it in the wintertime, summertime? I wasn't paying any attention. Was it coming? Was it becoming more visible once I got stressful or things were happening in my business or whatever? So it just wasn't. It was just something I was asking questions about, but something I wasn't worried about at all.
Nice. And I'm glad that you were able to actually highlight that, because I think a lot of times the moment we notice that something is different or something is off, we instantly kind of go into like our little corner in our little box and become a little introverted and self-conscious. Did you ever experience that after your diagnosis?
Being self-conscious?
Yeah.
Again, because I'm so dark, okay, and then what happens is it does show, but it's in a place that is not as defined as some of my brothers and sisters, okay, and so some of them may have it and maybe a little more defined, a lot more visible. With me, it's less visible, and so I'm a pretty confident person, so it didn't affect me that way, but I must admit I am aware, because just like I'm confident, I'm also I'm just aware of my presence, and like we all are, and I'm aware of how I'm looking and things of that nature. So if I'm getting dressed or whatever, so once it's visible in terms of I know it was permanent, then I did become a lot more aware of how I'm standing, which way I'm standing, my neck's up, my neck's down, all of those things. So yes, absolutely. Yeah, it didn't change my confidence, but it did make I was more aware. Right. Okay.
And I like that difference, being aware versus confident.
Yes.
Yep. So when were you actually diagnosed?
I've never truly been diagnosed other than from my doctor.
Nice.
He just looked at it and said, that's what I think it is, because he, I have two doctors, and one happened to be white, and he said that, he had it when he was younger. And so, but it went away. So, that kind of thing. And so for me, that was the only true diagnosis. So I don't know if, do I need to go to someone, a dermatologist or something of that nature? I've never done that. Again, probably because it's defined and it's controlled at one area. So if it had grown,
it wasn't a need to follow up.
To me, it wasn't.
Right.
I'm not saying that was the right thing to do, but for me, it was. I just didn't do it, and so I either took both of the doctors, their advice, or just took their word that that's what it was, and I moved from there.
Got you. What was the reaction to the people closer to you when it became more of a permanent thing?
No reaction, really. I mean, the people that's close to me, there's no reason for them to react to anything other than again. The reason why I'm saying that it is not as visible as some of my brothers and sisters that have it. So for me, again, my daughters, my son, they, a lot of times they didn't even recognize it for a while. And my kids are a little older, so they just didn't recognize it until maybe they caught me at one situation or one turn or with my head up.
With your head up
so
or
again,
like
because it's less visible, and then they would ask me what that is. I would tell them, and then. They better not say anything.
Now, in social experiences, you've mentioned that you were more aware of the situation, not necessarily cautious or insecure about it, but just aware. Were there ever a time that you felt ostracized or excluded during or being at social events?
No, and the reason why I can say no is because, as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm an author. I was self-employed, so I was in a lot of people's homes, a financial advisor. Yep. So coach, all of those things. I'm always around people. Yeah. And I'm still always around people. Yep. And so with that situation, I mean, my confidence and the ability to be around people, and it's just never stopped me from anything. Right. And I've never felt ostracized or anything of that nature. Nice. And so you just keep it moving, and I just kept it moving.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest misconception about vitiligo?
I don't know if I'm truly in a position to answer that question because, as I mentioned earlier, mine's just less visible. So I may not, be in the same position as some of my brothers and sisters. So I don't know if if I'm an authority on that or have the right to speak on that because of my position and where I'm at and my less visible in terms of where it's located. So I don't know if I'm the right person to truly answer that question. And so,
in your experience and the conversations that you've had, or the rooms that you've been in, and the conversations that were going on in that room, was there ever a time where you kind of felt like the perception was one way versus the reality of the situation?
Well, the biggest perception is a cure, like everything else, until everyone understands that there's no cure, based on my knowledge, or based on my knowledge that there isn't a cure. And so, I think most of the perception, those who know, those who want to spend time to be educated on it. The issue is most people are not educated on it. Obviously, we are those who have it, are I'm sure a lot more educated than those who do not.
Yeah.
So that's the misconception, is that people think it's a cure. People think people have done something. I've heard people say it's all about stress. Other people, your diet.
Right.
All of those kinds of things do come up, and I don't know. Maybe those things do play a part in that. But for the most part, it's usually an immune system type of situation and things of that nature. So that's why I said I'm less, in my mind, less qualified to speak on that because of where mine is located, the visibility, and so I may not get some of the same kind of reaction or scrutiny or questions or things of that nature that maybe some of my brothers and sisters get from that.
Gotcha. Is there anything that you would like to inform the world, or is there one thing that you want to leave with us? Maybe a quote of some sort?
Well, I will say that after everything is said and done, there's usually more said than done. Okay, and the brothers and sisters that have Vitiligo, obviously they're great people. Everybody's the same. We're just moving forward. We have something that not everyone has, so that makes us distinct. That makes us special.
Right.
That makes us different. And there's nothing wrong with being distinct. There's nothing wrong with being special. There's nothing wrong with being different. But we just keep it moving, and it is what it is.
It is what it is.
There's a lot of issues that people have that are a lot greater and a lot more difficult to deal with than what we have, and then we just keep it moving. And so that's what you'll find, great people that just a little distinct, just a little different, but we just keep it moving.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming. Thank you so much for being open and being able to have this conversation with us today.
Thank you, Ms. Chris. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope to see you at the next one.
CMPRadio.net. It's the station.
Hey, Lottie Dottie and everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As you already know, we are having conversations with the City of Chester community about vitiligo. And thank you guys for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. So I'm here with Miss Tasha.
Hackett.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us. If you could just introduce
for
yourself really quick.
I am Tasha Hackett from Chester.
Yay, see pride.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for coming out and for having this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like it's never really easy to talk about personal experiences, let alone personal experiences that may be like a huge misconception for the public eye. Like on the outside looking in, it's easy for them to dictate or to judge what the reality of the situation is versus actually having this conversation. So thank you for having this conversation.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
So just a reminder, guys, vitiligo, it causes the loss of skin color. It occurs when the pigment producing cells either stop working or actually die off. So it's also known as a lack of melanin. So again, thank you for sharing the story and for having this conversation with us.
You're welcome.
Let me not get discombobulated. Okay. How long have you had this condition or noticed that there was something different?
Back in 2003, when I gave birth to my daughter.
Okay.
I want to say she was born in February, so about July, that's when I noticed it was like, started out like a heat rash on my hands. And I would have like tingling sensations and different things like that. So thinking that it was a heat rash, you just let it go, and as time went on, it started spreading to my fingers. 2004 is when I went to a dermatologist instead of going to my primary. I grew up around older people with vitiligo, so we never looked at people like, what's that? I don't want to touch you. No, don't give me a hug.
Right.
Can I get it?
Right.
We weren't raised like that. So about 2004 is when I was actually diagnosed with vitiligo, but I knew what it was.
Right.
Once it started spreading.
Yeah.
So I tried different creams and oils, and it didn't work. And I would notice, around my eyes, like the pigment would go away, and then sometimes it would come back. So now it's to the point where it's spreading to my face and my ears, and my fingers look exactly like my toes. My toes are just like my fingers. So I've never been a fan of makeup, sunscreen. I didn't come out for like a year after, it started spreading. I was depressed. I didn't want to, come out. I wouldn't open my door unless it was somebody that knew really what was going on. I wouldn't come downstairs or go out without my makeup. So makeup became a big part of my life for up until maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
Then I just stopped wearing it. I hate the beach because of the sun. It scares me. So I have my moments where it's like, okay, I'm bold today. I'm going to just do my thing. And then sometimes I get depressed about it. I wanted to actually get a vitiligo awareness walk together for the city.
I think
to
that would be a great idea.
Awareness to people that's dealing with it, but more so children, because they don't understand what's going on with their bodies. Down to bullying and being shunned and talked about, and nobody wants to be depressed or have them trying to commit suicide or hurt themselves.
Exactly. So I'm sorry, girl. Thank you so much. You really just dived in. I really appreciate it. I didn't have to prong it out, but I was literally about to ask, what were some of the things that you noticed that was different? And you mentioned your fingers. It started off on your hands and it kind of went down to your fingers, and it was things like avoiding the sun and avoiding going out and social events and stuff. So can you talk a little bit more about the difference between then and now? I know that you mentioned that makeup was something that you had to have versus now you really don't care for it. So can you just talk about that a little bit more, like the before and after?
Well, before it was, you just getting used to this thing that's just taking over, and I went through a point where, I used to be fly back in the day, and now just look at me, I go through moments like that, but it's like now, what can I do about it? It's going to continue to spread, so I have to embrace every spot that God chose to give me.
Okay. Okay. Empowerment. Another person that we interviewed said that he just got to a point where he realized, it is what it is. There's so much things that he can't change. There's so many things that he can. He has control over his mindset. And I really commend you for being able to take ownership and even bringing up your depression. It seems like depression is a common word that's mentioned, but to actually have the conversation of what that looks like is a whole different ball game. So thank you for mentioning that.
Absolutely.
So what was the moment that you were like, you know what, forget this. I'm beautiful. I am who I am. I know that I have this, but this does not define me.
I have 3 children. So as they get older, I want them to be confident in who they are. So it starts at home.
Yeah, Mom. Okay, I'm all over the place. Give me a second. Hold on. Was there ever a time that you felt ostracized? I know that you said you grew up with a lot of older people who already have vitiligo, so you already knew
what it was
or had the experiences of what it was. It wasn't really like that shocker for you. So with explaining it to other people, was there ever a time that you kind of felt excluded or ooh, what?
No, it's more. It's not the adults. It's more so children because they don't understand. They don't know. What it is.
Children don't hold back anything.
Right.
They'll say anything that comes to their mind.
So it's more so, children looking like, oh, what's that? What happened to your skin? And I got before, what, did you get burned? How did it happen? Different things like that. But it's more so children, not the adults. Okay.
And in social events or experiences now, how do you feel? What is the difference between then and after you kind of, became a mom, got this more self-conscious, more aware of what was going on?
I don't see a difference. Nobody's ever treated me different. Family-wise, my grandmother had it. I was told my great-grandfather had it. So it's studies say it's supposed to skip a generation. It didn't in my family.
Gotcha.
I had an uncle that was diagnosed with cancer a few years back, and that's when his came out.
Oh.
So
growing
up, he never had a spot or anything. So he called me up one day and he called me Jay Blige. So he said, Blige, he said, I got that stuff you got all over your face. It's all over my back. So I went over to see him and he pulled his shirt up and he had baseball size spots all over his back. Yeah.
And that's another thing, like, you know, being able to use your experience to help somebody else through theirs. And I'm glad that he felt comfortable with you. Like, it wasn't the family where it's like, oh no, you know, she got that, and I don't know where that came from, because that was, you know, and especially in African American or in Black family houses, you know, like superstition, voodoo, you know, like all of that is really a thing. So I'm glad that your family was more on a united front, and also transparent about having the conversation, because a lot of times it's also known that, you know, kids are supposed to stay in the kids' place. So grandma, what's that? Mind your business. You know, so I'm glad that y'all were able to have that conversation.
We have to explain it to the kids, because they, you know, they don't know.
Yeah, and they won't if we don't have the conversation.
Correct.
Yeah. So, last question: what is the biggest misconception that you feel is out there about vitiligo?
That it's contagious.
Yeah.
I think people think that, you know, if you give me a hug or you speak to me or you touch me or something like that, they can get it, and it's not contagious. Like we, as I'll say, the vitiligo family, we have to embrace every spot that pops up.
Yeah.
And we all are unique in our own way. We all have different patterns, and that's what makes us unique.
Yep. Any final words? Any final words? That seems so final. Sorry. Any last words that you wanted to mention? Anything else you wanted to say?
I want to thank you for having me.
This was
exciting. And I just want to say to everybody that's dealing with this autoimmune deficiency is to embrace who you are, know who you are, and be confident and love yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
It brightened my day. All right, y'all. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. You already know this is Chris, tuned in with CMP Radio. Make sure you liking and following. See y'all.
CMPRadio.net. It's the station.
I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Thank you.
So, if you could just introduce yourself really quick.
I'm Daz Darryl Neller.
Okay.
As a lot of y'all probably know me as.
So, as everyone already knows, we're here to talk about vitiligo. It is the cause of loss of skin color. It usually occurs when the pigment cells are either dying or aren't working as properly, and it's also known as a lack of melanin. So, thank you again for coming. Thank you again for being willing to share your experience and your story with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, how long have you had this condition, or how long have you noticed something was off?
I noticed I had it around, I was like 9 or 10. I had fell off a bike. I was riding a bike. I fell. I got up. I had some little scuffs on me. But once I looked, I'm like, oh, I ran home. I thought I was like bleeding. It was like skin, like to the meat.
Yep.
So I run home like, Mom, I'm bleeding, I fell. So you check, when I check, I only got some little scuff marks on me. But what is this?
Right.
So after a while, we end up going to the doctors to see what it actually was, because it started out just, my knees was completely white and just my elbows.
Okay.
That was it. Then later on down the line, my whole eye was like that, and then I had a patch right here. But that all went away.
Okay.
It all kind of went away completely. If you see, my knees is like still, this was all white at one point. All of them, both of them.
Okay.
But it all went away, but then it came back gradually. But that was like around 10 when that happened.
Okay.
But yeah, the doctor.
Gotcha. So some of the things that you noticed, that was going to be my next question. Some of the things that you noticed that was different was when you fell, your scrapes wasn't as severe as they looked.
Right.
The coloration was a little bit wider and bigger.
Right.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, we end up, my mom ended up taking me to the doctors to see what it actually was. Okay. Because now that it was, it was only scuff marks, that's gone. But now what is this mark? And that's when I noticed it, when I fell off a bike. That was around, I want to say around 9 or 10.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So when were you actually diagnosed with vitiligo?
Shortly after that. I want to say probably like around that time. Because it was shortly after that we went to the doctors. And,
shout out to Mom
they
for
were saying
being
that, I remember the doctors saying, they didn't know where it came from. That they didn't know if it was coming from the sunlight or if it was coming from not enough something in my blood. And I can remember, and I'm glad to this day that my mom gave me the opportunity to answer the question myself. The doctor said to her, they wanted to do some experimenting just to see where it was coming from. And I can remember that little kid like, so y'all want to experiment on me? Y'all telling me y'all don't know where it came from, but y'all want to experiment to see where it came from. So I made the decision in my head at that point that I didn't want to go through whatever they was trying to do. I didn't want to go through it. Whatever was going to happen, it was going to happen naturally. So my mom asked me, you know, did I want to do it? And no, I don't want to do it. Now, I don't want to do it. If they telling me, if he's sitting here telling me he don't know where it came from, then what are y'all going to do to figure? Y'all going to use me to figure it out?
To figure it out?
No, I ain't going for that. No, so, and that's where I can say I was diagnosed with it at.
I definitely want to shout mom out because, you know, it's definitely some moms out there that's like, you know, I got to make the decision.
I mean,
it's going to be what I say.
Like some of the people, like, you know, a few people that I went to school with back in elementary that I seen had it, and then seeing them later on in life, and then they completely cover it. I always had it in my head. Damn, they went through that experiment. They let them experiment on it. I mean, that's just my inner thought, and I always kept it to myself and never asked nobody.
Right.
You know, I remember the one girl, she had little spots, I can remember it. And then later on in life, she was completely covered with just some brown spots. And in my head, I'm saying, well, mine came and went, and, you know. Yeah,
shifted,
but
molded.
It never went, you know, even the ones that was on my face, thank God, that it all completely went. But, I mean, that was what it was.
Got you. No, I definitely understand. And I was going to ask you to describe that moment, you know, and being diagnosed. So I definitely thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I think that, again, it's really important to highlight, you know, how important it was for your mom to not take it lightly, you know, to actually want to get a professional opinion and then to actually include you in that decision-making process. I think that's critical. So what was the reactions of the people closer to you or like your friends when you know, were diagnosed and it became more permanent?
I think the people that was close to me, it was a natural thing for them because it kind of like grew with them. Okay. You know, like from day one to where it progressed to. It's just the public, I want to say like the older people made me discouraged. Like at a young age, I would always wear long sleeve. Summer, winter, fall, I would always wear a long sleeve shirt and pants all the time. Winter, it didn't matter because I didn't have the right answers for adults. Oh, what's that? What's this? Or what's that? It wasn't really the kids. It was the older people that would always ask me about it and made me like not like it or, you know, feel like I wanted to hide it. But then later on in life, I mean, this the new Louis Vuitton skin if you ask me, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the attention, I'm gonna say, didn't bother me no more for people to stare at me because I was used to it. You know, I got over that scared feeling of it. It was kind of like, I guess, receipt, and I hated the ball.
Like more of like it is what it is and accepting it.
Yeah. Like it took a while though. It took a while.
And I think that's the part that we don't really talk about. You know, like the process of getting to that part where, you know, it no longer bothers you because you just accepted it as a part of you, you know? And, but it's also something that doesn't define you. Right. Like, it's just something that just so happened. It's a rare, you know, and just like another person who we interviewed, Mr. Derrick mentioned, you know, like it's exclusive. You guys are really unique.
Yeah. I mean,
like you said, the Louis Vuitton skin.
That's how I say it. And I be trying to encourage some people that I see that kind of like, they might be a little shy, and I'll do the same thing. I'll be like, yo, you know what I mean? Nah, don't. Or I'm going to say the people I seen wearing makeup, trying to cover it, and I could see it. And I'll be like, yo, don't cover that up. Nah, don't wear that makeup. Nah, it is what, you know, play that. You know what I mean? The way you pick your outfit, I'll play that the same way. I include it with my outfit.
I like that. Yeah. Thanks, Daz. Okay. So I was actually going to ask for you to describe certain social experiences where you felt maybe self-conscious or you was a little concerned.
All those feelings were at a young age. When I first discovered it is when I went through all those stages, because I'm gonna say by teenage years I thought I was that boy and this was a part of it. Like you staring at me because it is, or because whatever. But I don't know. That was all at a young age that it used to discourage me, or I used to be kind of like embarrassed when people asked me about it. But now it just roll right off. It ain't even about nothing.
Gotcha.
I'm a little emotional about it, though.
Nah, you cool. Thank you. Listen, vulnerable, and your ability to be able to show it and to be able to talk about it. Thank you. Seriously. I wish that it was more people that was as brave as you are and as confident as you are to be able to handle this. Last question, though. What is the biggest misconception? What do you think the biggest thing that people automatically assume that isn't necessarily true?
Like it's a disease or something. I don't know. Like it's contagious.
Yeah, like if they
like,
touch you, or
what's
if they
that,
get too
or
close.
is it? Can I catch it if I'm too close? That to me is what I think.
How do you handle those experiences?
Say that again?
How do you handle those experiences?
I don't know. Now it's natural. That's all I can say is natural. If they ask me a question, I can answer it straight. Like you talking to me now, or me answering you now, I don't know.
So it sounds like, living with it, learning about it, and actually having, a hold on it is what's really making the biggest difference from the younger you and the now grown older you, the Louis Vuitton skin.
I used to try to hide it. Now I try to show it off.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to share with us? Any last thoughts?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you for coming. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, y'all. Make sure y'all tune in.
CMPRadio.net. It's the station. CMPRadio.net. It's the station.
Hey, Lottie Dottie and everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You already know how we do here at CMP Radio, cultivating mature positivity, constantly making progress, because we are Chester-made products, changing media's perception. So I'm here now, and I just want to thank you for being willing to sit down with us and actually being vulnerable and sharing your story. And if you could just introduce yourself really quick.
How are you? My name is Al Layton, owner and operator of Pressure Inc. And I'm born and raised in the city of Chester, so I am Chester too.
Hey, see, look at this. This is the family, definitely the family. So, quick definition: vitiligo causes skin color, the loss of skin color. Excuse me. It occurs when pigments-producing cells die or stop functioning correctly. It's also known as the lack of melanin. So again, thank you for taking the time out to share your story with us and having this conversation. We hope that it's going to affect many.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm actually glad I can be a part of it to try to bring some more awareness to it.
So how long have you had this condition, or have you noticed that something was different or off?
I want to say probably 2013 was when I first started to notice it. And it literally really started with like 2 spots on my hand. And I kind of just blew it off. Like I was like, okay, something is weird there, but I don't know, maybe I burnt myself or something. Like I didn't really pay too much attention to it.
Gotcha.
Until it started spreading. So then when I started getting a few more spots, a couple people was like, well, you need to go to the doctor and see what's going on with that, and so on and so forth. I'm like, I didn't feel any different.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't feel any different physically, so I kind of just kept moving.
And that was going to be my next question. Did you feel any difference? Was there a moment where you were like, all right, what was the moment where you was like, all right, let me look more into this?
Well, I didn't feel any different physically. Mentally, I didn't feel any different either. But when I decided to actually go and first look into it, it's kind of like the feeling was weird. Like you take a shower and things of that nature, and it just felt like pins and needles on my hands.
Okay.
So at that point, I was like, all right, well,
maybe I should investigate.
Maybe I should investigate. So I went to my primary care physician first, and he pretty much just said, well, I mean, it's really nothing you can do. Like, we'll keep an eye on it. You're physically healthy. Like, your physical, everything is good. Your blood work, everything looks good. So he kind of just pretty much did the same thing I kind of did and just pushed it off. Right. And just pushed it off.
So when were you officially diagnosed?
I want to say probably like 2 or 3 years after the first check-in. And that was, again, because it had spread a little further on my hands. And he told me what a couple options were. Like, it could be this or it can be that. Right. And I forget what the other one was, but vitiligo was the one on me. He kind of leaned more towards that. He also said I should go see a dermatologist or a specialist. And to me, I was just like, well, if she's going to tell me to say, or he's going to tell me the same thing you're telling me, then what's the point of that? Especially if I'm not physically or my health isn't affected by it. So we kind of moved on, and again, eventually, once it started spreading a little more on my hands, then I was like, all right, well, at least I'll go see the actual dermatologist. Right.
And after that visit, what were some of the things that you remember thinking to yourself?
Really, it was nothing different thinking to myself, other than the fact I did wonder, like, how much it would actually spread. So I can't sit here and act like I didn't have. Right. I was definitely concerned. Not so much the health-wise, because everyone kept reassuring the fact that health-wise you're perfectly fine. It doesn't do anything of that nature. Just be a little more. I had to be a little more careful and cautious as far as being out in the sun, because at that time I was coaching football. So I was constantly out in the sun, out in the heat, and I've never been one for sunscreen and things of that nature. Like, I always get fussed at for that. However, with this condition, they kind of make sure that they reiterate the fact that you need to be more careful as far as covering it, not covering it as far as hiding or anything of that, but using sunscreen, using some type of protective to make sure that you're not actually hurting yourself.
Gotcha. Okay. What was the reactions to the people closer to you, as you mentioned it started to spread and become more permanent?
I guess their reaction was more so a little concerned at first, because they didn't really know what it was or the effects of it. So it was more so of concern. Like, they're the ones that really got me to go to the doctor, because if it was up to me, I'm like, I'm not paying for a doctor visit just for them to tell me nothing that they can't do anything. I will say, when I did go to the dermatologist, I went to one and they kind of was just like standoffish. It wasn't a real connection. Like, with a doctor, you always want a connection. So I went to another dermatologist, and she was great. Like, she actually had information. She actually gave feedback. I had questions, she gave answers. Not so much come in the room, this what it is, and run back out of the room. And with her, she actually tried a steroidal cream. She gave me 2 different ones. So as you can see, it's around my mouth and around my hands. Well, because your mouth area is more sensitive than your hands, so you can't use the same amount of
that makes sense.
Medicine around there. So I had one for my face and one for my hands. The hands never worked. Like, it never did any kind of change or anything. I will say the one with my mouth, it did work. Like, the pigment started coming back. However, with the steroid, you can only use it but for so long. So once I stopped using it, then it started coming back again. And because of the pandemic and things of that nature, the doctor visits and everything was changed, and I never went back to try to see if anything else would change or whatever. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know.
So in social experiences, I know you mentioned you used to coach, you used to be outside a lot more. What were some of the differences once you were diagnosed in your social experiences or events?
Funny enough, like, the only real difference is the interaction with children. Because usually, like, the adults, even if they have questions, like, they're usually poker facious about it, so they'll still try to speak the same and do the same things. And I know that personally, because before I started getting it, I was the same way. I have to admit that. But with the children, they're usually the ones who would just come up out of nowhere. Like, you don't even know them. It'll just be a random kid that comes up and like, hey, mister, what happened to your hands? Like, did you get burned or something of that nature? So it's not so much the adults, at least in my experience, it's more so with the children of trying to explain to them, like, what's going on.
Right.
Like, it's not contagious. Like, you can shake my hand. It's
Right.
not going to jump off and bite you or anything of that nature. But, yeah, usually it's the children that are more
Gotcha.
outwardly questioning of it.
Okay. And with the adults, is there ever a time that you feel ostracized or excluded?
No.
That's
I
good.
can never say I've been excluded. At least personally, I don't. I
You
can
don't
never
feel
recall
so.
that. Yeah.
Got you. This is the last question. I know our time has flown by, but what do you think is the
just
biggest?
getting in the groove.
I know, just
warming
getting
up now.
comfortable.
Right.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about vitiligo?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it is contagious, or that it is like a serious health risk, or like, what do you have, or like that type of ordeal.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest misconception. But it's not contagious. Like, you won't catch it if you touch me or if you're too close. It's not a 6 foot thing where you have to stay 6 feet away. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I've heard people say, or even, like I said, my personal experience of before I was educated on it was like,
Right.
well, I mean, what exactly is it? Like,
Right,
should
right.
I? Can I? So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, it's not contagious. You can't catch it by being close or contact. So
Okay.
That's
Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us? Any last minute words of advice, or if you wanted to speak to your fellow vitiligo brothers and sisters, as Mr. Derrick put it in another interview?
I mean, I just would say, be confident and know who you are.
Yeah.
As long as you know who you are and are confident in you, like the outward appearance is always going to change anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're confident in yourself and you know who you are, then anything that happens to you, you can overcome it. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Thank you again for spending some time with us.
Oh,
and
no problem.
opening
Thanks
up.
for having me.
I appreciate it. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. You already know how it go. Make sure you're liking and following cmpradio.net.
CMPRadio.net. It's the station.
Hey, lottie dottie and everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to CMP Radio. Cultivating mature positivity, constantly making progress, because we are custom-made residents, custom-made products, changing media's perspective. Hey, Kenya.
Hey.
How you?
I'm great.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you for
If you
having
could
me.
introduce yourself really quick.
Kenya Givens, because that's my Chester piece, Isaac. Kenya Givens, Isaac, yes.
Okay. Hey, girl. Hey. So thank you
Hey.
so much for coming again. I want to I gotta admit, the other interviews have definitely been enlightening and fun, and I know this is going to be even more enlightening and even more fun.
Okay.
So, really quick, guys, just to remind you, we're talking about vitiligo. It is the cause of the loss of skin color. It usually occurs when producing cells either die or are not functioning properly. It's also known as the lack of melanin. So again, thank you for being willing to be vulnerable and have this conversation with us. It's really, really, really key, and hopefully it'll, change your perspective. All right, so
You can't
our
hide from
first-
it. It's written all over my face.
See, I told you it was going. I told you what I said, and I said what it was going to be, because that's what it is. So how long have you had this condition, or noticed that something was off?
So I'm going to really be vulnerable and put it out there. I'm 48 today, and at 44 and a half or so, I noticed white starting to kind of, or a pigment change starting to happen around my fingertips and like around my mouth. It's when I noticed it.
Okay.
Then I started looking, trying to figure out what it could be.
Right.
Right.
Did you go to MD?
So I then, I went to my primary.
Okay.
Well, I went online.
Okay.
I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep by nature, right? Or by my trade.
Right.
So I'm into medicines, and I've sold derms, I've sold diabetes, and everything in the middle.
Right.
So of course I'm going out there trying to figure out what it could be. And pretty early on, I think I thought it was vitiligo. Okay. The funny thing is, I have a black dermatologist, and that was by choice, just in general, outside of vitiligo. Yeah. So I go to her, female, black woman, and I'm like, you see what's happening? I really think it's vitiligo. And it's interesting because she didn't want to believe that that's what it was. Now, this was before any of this and any of this, but it was, like I said, right here in the corners of my mouth and starting on the tips of my fingers. Right. And she thought maybe it was psoriasis. She thought it was eczema. She thought I was having an allergic reaction. And it's funny because I felt like I had to make her comfortable with the fact that I think it's vitiligo. Right. Like, that's what I think it is. Right. So she gave me these creams and topicals, and we tried Melaleuca honey and, all of these things. And there was nothing really changing. And because I was the one looking in the mirror every day, I could see that it was starting to spread. Right. She was like, well, no, I don't know if it's spreading. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's spreading. It's definitely. Yeah. I mean, and I think that speaks volumes that I've always known that I had to be my own advocate. Yeah. Right? Anyway, in medicine. So even most particular in this, that now my physical appearance was about to change. So then she finally got on board and said, okay, I think it might be vitiligo.
What was that time frame, if you don't mind me asking?
That probably took anywhere from 6 months to 6 to 8 months, that process. Yeah. Because in between there, it was try this, nothing's really happened, and then the more I researched it, there was really no cure. Yeah. What I did find was that through light therapy, there was this Ultra V, either A or B, whatever, that you could potentially do. And in some people, the skin started to regenerate color. And I can show you where. So I ultimately, fast forward, found a doctor. There's only one in the area. Like, I live in Delaware now. So he's associated with the University of Penn. So that's how, and then I backed into it. Now, thank God, again, my background helped me to get to that. Right. And it was very self-directed and generated because I felt like my medical doctors really weren't helpful. Had to be the advocate. Had to be my own personal advocate. Yeah. So I found the doctor who did it. I made the appointment. Well, that's not true. I found it, asked her. She then got back to me and said, yes, this is the doctor I think you should go to. He may be able to help you with this light therapy type of thing.
And you said that he was associated with UPenn. Did that bring any comfort to you?
It did. That it was University of Penn, that it had been, what little testing that had been done with vitiligo. And I say this often, I liken it to MS, multiple, got you. Years ago, you had an MS diagnosis. That was just it. You were going to eventually not be able to walk. It was a lot of things were going to happen, right? So, but then through research, money, right? More people are happening. Medications are coming out. Right. So now it used to be, so my sister-in-law had MS, and I saw the progression of that disease state. First it was, she had to carry freezer, coolers around because her medication had to be kept cold, and it was only via injection, and she had to do that a lot of times, right? And so that was a lot. Then it was, that kind of, more medicine started coming out. The advancements of the disease state started changing. Right. Now I have a line sister who has MS, caught pretty early. She has no injectables. She pops a pill one every 3 months or something like that. I mentioned that because I think vitiligo is kind of in that study research stage. It's happening, but Big Pharma hasn't found, there is no cure. Big Pharma hasn't figured out how to monetize it. So there's no real research that's being done. I mean, the research may be being done, but nobody's gotten in to say, okay, we can fix it, so we can monetize it. So
here's
now,
the cure.
Correct, because there is no real cure.
Got you.
That's the only reason why I mentioned that whole process. I hope you could follow.
No,
right?
I definitely, and I think that that's key to be able to make the connection, you know, and we're talking about, you know, African Americans, so,
Correct.
you know, black people in healthcare.
Correct.
It's such a controversial conversation, and it's not a common conversation.
That's right.
Because it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. You know, it's faded, it's fade. And then with me having, because I have, you know, physicians in my family, so I definitely understand sometimes, you know, having the conversation with our own and trying to advocate for ourselves. So I thought that it was really interesting that you mentioned that you realized early on that you would have to be your own advocate.
Correct.
How was that feeling with just realizing that, like, you know, I'm paying into this whole process, this whole healthcare.
I'm paying into my healthcare. I'm paying co-pays. I'm paying my premiums.
Right.
Because now, when I first started in the industry that I'm in, I sold insurance first. So this has come full circle for me. So I know what it's like to have to. Hey, I'm aging myself, but I told you my age already. But in the 90s, when I got into selling insurance, your employer paid for your premium, right? Now we go into 2021,
almost
and you're paying a portion
of your
premium, if not all, right? And then if you want birth control, it's a rider that you got to add to it. If you want dental, it's a rider that you add. So healthcare has changed. The reason I even got into pharmaceutical sales in the first place is because my grandma was going to the doctors and she had all these medications and she couldn't explain to me what any of them were for. I'm asking, do you take them all at the same time? Should you take them with food? Should you not?
Right.
And she couldn't answer me because her answer was, this is what the doctor gave me, so this is what I'm going to take. Nonsense.
Yeah.
So then I started going to the doctor with her, and at that time, again, remember I sold insurance, so I knew that doctors were getting paid a certain amount to minimize the time that they're seeing patients. They're getting capped per patient. It's called a capitation fee, I think. And so if you have 56 patients in your practice, you're going to get paid for 56 patients, but if you spend 2 hours with one patient, you're not making enough. Right? So I need to spend like 15 minutes average with each patient.
Wow.
Right? So you're banking, the healthcare industry was banking on people not being their own advocates, not asking questions, not needing a whole lot of time to talk about what
just
the
saying,
disease states.
and
Right. And I realized early on that wasn't going to work for me. Okay, tag me in.
Yep.
I'm going to the doctors with my grandmother. Doctor, you might want to save some time because I'm going in. I want to know, how does this one work with this? How does that? Should she not take
what's
this?
the side effect of this?
Correct. And then that's when I started realizing, you know what? All of us, our people, need advocates. I'm going into the industry. And that's how I kind of worked my way in. Right.
And that's how it was.
Yup, and that's how it was.
So we went through all of this. You said that it kind of took like a 6 to 8 month process for your dermatologist to kind of get on board with it. When you were officially diagnosed, can you talk about that moment in time and how you felt?
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go back a little further because during that 6 to 8 month period, you originally asked me, how did you feel, right? I felt ostracized, isolated because here I'm trying to convince the doctor that this is what I think it is. Now, remember, I'm changing. So all the people around me are seeing me change. They're asking me questions. I don't have the answers for them. So I felt like, and I still feel like this to this day, I do a lot of making my loved ones feel comfortable with this disease state because they have a hard time looking at me changing. So that's how I felt that first 6 to 8 months. It was just so frustrating. Like, what is it? Is it really this? If it is, can we just start acting on it? And then it was like, there was a period where I got defeated. I felt defeated because I was like, there is no cure. I'm having such a hard time to fight to even get it diagnosed. And then what's next? That, forget it. I'm not going to do anything. So I remember going to the one doctor that I was recommended to go to. We talked about the light therapy. He gave me the real prognosis. Like, it may change, it may not. Sometimes, even if it does change, it could come back. And I was just like, at that point, I was then trying to become one with this changing look. Because now it's starting to spread. I'm starting to see it. I'm not a big makeup girl anyway, but now I'm trying to like put makeup on to cover it. And it really initially wasn't so much to make me feel good. It was to make
people comfortable around
my family feel comfortable. Then I had to start looking at myself in the mirror like, yo, sis, you really changing. And I was always one of those people that were like, you know, beauty's the eye of the beholder, right? I look the way I look. Prior to vitiligo, I had nothing to do with it. God did it, you know, genes and God, so whatever. It was much better to be a beautiful person on the inside and that would exude on the outside, right? I felt like that. That's what I said. That's how I lived my life. But I'm also a Jesus girl. So then I go, all right, God, you testing me? Because I didn't
What's
said
going on?
this,
Right. Now
it
you're
ain't
making
about
me
what
really-
you look like. It's about who you are on the inside. You got to be good. That'll exude through. Now,
Now you really gotta live it.
oh, shucks. Because now I'm changing. And to the naked eye, is this still beautiful? You know, I was able to look at myself before and go, I'm a pretty girl. You know, I like, you know, and I worked on that over the years,
Yeah.
right? Because you go through them teenagers where
Yeah.
you feel
And you have
awkward
to
and maybe
convince
you don't look.
yourself,
And so
yeah.
I worked on convincing myself that I liked what I saw in the mirror. Now I got to convince myself that even through the change, that it's still me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My inside probably is even better because now I'm a little more sensitive, sympathetic to people who don't look like the norm. And so is that going to exude out? And am I still going to be able to walk in my confidence? Because I've always been that chick.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't really care what I had on, what I looked like. I come from a family.
Yeah, we're gonna do this.
We gonna do this. I'm gonna be
we
great.
Gonna look good.
'Cause I'm great,
Right.
and I'm gonna look good while I'm doing
Exactly.
it. But has that changed?
Right.
Because now I'm having some pigment things going on. Like, so I really had to work through that and check myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you're willing to do the work because you know it's
Absolutely.
easy to ignore the uncomfortable parts. You know, it's easy to just kind of like put that to the back front.
Right.
But, you know, what you think is what you do, and what you do is how you are. So
You better say it.
all kind of goes
It all
into
goes
one.
hand in hand.
So I'm glad that you were still able to make that. To do that work, to do that inner work.
Right. And I think it did have something to do with this. Didn't happen to me in my 20s. Didn't happen to me in my 30s. And not even in my early 40s. Like, I'm close to 50. It's like, girl,
And here
if
we
you
are.
don't got some self-love, you better get it now. Because when you going to get it?
Well, I'm glad that you got it.
Appreciate yourself. Yeah.
So describe some of your social experiences. Prior to, like you mentioned, you didn't really care that much for makeup. Now you feel like you're drawn to it a little bit more.
A little bit more.
You mentioned that you was always that girl, kind of the life of the party. Like once you get there, it is what it is. We're having a good time, regardless. You know,
because I'm here.
Right.
And so if I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna enjoy myself.
Exactly.
So, right.
I'm the same way. We're not gonna waste no time.
I ain't gonna
now.
waste no time. Okay.
So, talk to me about the difference. How were you then? What are you working on now?
I think I went through a period where I didn't come out a lot. I didn't. I'm in a sorority. You know, shout out to Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Ooh. So, you know, I think I did start to retreat a little bit. And it wasn't that I felt so bad about myself. It was having to explain to others. You know, and then I don't know if that made it worse because I went away for a period and then I would start to come around and now everybody kind of looking. Now I forget that I look different because I'm just
you
me.
Just like, hey, yeah.
And I be like, hey, in the mix, and they looking at me and I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
right. I
So
found I had
this.
to do that a lot. Like, I got this vitiligo. It just happened. I don't know why it happened. It's no real cure. I'm still me. You good? Okay.
So it kind of turned into like an elevator speech.
It sure did. It sure did.
How do you feel about that?
I think it just is what it is. Because of
You know
people's
what?
uncomfortability, and I'm not going to be uncomfortable. That's what I'm not going to do.
Yep.
So I just, you know, I'm the one. If you see the big red elephant in the room, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, y'all see that big red elephant? We see it. We acknowledge it. Done."
Okay. At least we got it out.
At
of
least
our
now
system.
we
We're
know.
not going to act like
Next.
it's not there. Yeah. And that ownership, that accountability is what makes this entire situation beautiful.
Yep.
Because it's like not only acknowledging, you know, that you have this new diagnosis,
right,
but acknowledging that nothing else is really different.
Nothing
You're
else
still
is really
you.
different.
Your
Yeah.
inside is still blossoming. It's
Yep.
the outside that changes. And if that's what you have an issue with, then is
you
it
probably
really
can't bang with me no way, so it's cool.
Hurt.
Period.
So we're at our last question. I
Okay.
know time is speeding by
Yes.
us. We're having,
And I'm
you
a
know,
talker.
time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the biggest misconception about vitiligo?
I think the biggest misconception about vitiligo is somehow it's not beautiful. Somehow, you know, because you're not norm. And I'm waiting to find what this norm is.
Yeah.
We come in different
Like, what is
sizes,
it? What is
shapes,
it?
colors. You know, we have different hair colors, different hair shapes. Like, we're different. So
Right.
The misconception is because this exists, in some way it lessens my physical beauty.
Okay.
That's a misconception. What I love is now we have the Winnie Harlows of the world. That's a, you know, spokesperson.
advocate, speaks
she's
very well
right
about it.
I bought a Barbie doll. I meant to bring it today, where there's, you know, she's a black girl. She got Afro puffs. I sit her on my mantle, but she has vitiligo in spots. You know, when I see little kids looking at me, I'm not uncomfortable. I go, yup, it's vitiligo. But and you might be a different color than her, but we all still beautiful, right?
Right.
We got to normalize this thing. You know. And
I definitely agree. Thank you. Kenya, thank you for
welcome.
your interview. I really appreciate having this conversation with
Yeah.
you. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Thank you guys for doing this. I think that it's good to be able to talk about things that are affecting our community, and it is affecting our community. It happens to white people too, but you can't see it as prevalent because we are naturally browner and we come in different colors. Yeah. And so we got to normalize all the things that may be happening with us in our community, you know, medically, mentally, all of those things, so that then we can be our own advocates and we call a thing beautiful. And if we say it's beautiful, then it is. We don't need outside people to tell us who we are and what, you know, our greatness.
Y'all heard it. Y'all
there
heard
you
it.
go.
Y'all heard it. Y'all know what it is. I told you from the beginning that this is what it's going to be. So you should listen to me.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Kenya, for your
Thank
time.
you.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
And y'all already know. Hopefully you're liking, following, and subscribing to CMPRadio.net. It's a family
doing it
thing.
big.
Cultivating mature positivity.
CMPRadio.net.